Welcome. First, I want to acknowledge you because formidable NBA basketball player, but also you show repeatedly that there is true strength in vulnerability. And also, your commitment to mental health. And I was reading up and I saw that you went to a marriage counselor, you had a sports psychiatrist, you went to parent counseling. What am I missing?
Anger management counseling.
Yeah, a long list. So thank you for what you're doing. This looks super powerful, airing on Showtime, May 31st, 10 p.m. Can you take us through your childhood and what it was like in Queensbridge?
Yeah, it was definitely, thanks for having me here. It was definitely very similar to any urban community or any impoverished community. The unique thing about Queensbridge is in Long Island City, New York. So it's the most booming real estate in New York City right now. So it's a real beautiful place. But the people inside the community, we weren't educated enough to take advantage of where we were at. And we was influenced by so much violence, drugs and frustration, depression, so much things like that kind of infiltrated, our mind and our spirits. But if you look at Long Island City, if you go there to this day and nobody's outside, 6 basketball courts, and grass everywhere. You've seen the buildings. It's not like if you was in Kenya or if you was in New Orleans or Baltimore, Detroit, Buffalo. It's not like that. It's really nice. But for some reason, we couldn't, get out of that kind of poverty state of mind.
And during that time, too, it was the middle of the crack wars.
Yeah, that didn't make it any better. Our community, it's a very tight-knit community. Mm-hmm. So back in the days when we grew up, the older guys or the OGs in our community, if they saw somebody doing something wrong, they would get on you. They had the right to spank a kid, and the parents would not get upset at the older, lady or man who was disciplining us. But when drugs came into the community, it kind of shifted. Now, growing up in that, it's normal. Mm-hmm. But then as you get older, you hear the stories. Like in the 60s and 70s, it wasn't that rough or that difficult, to deal with drugs. Just all of a sudden, just kind of came into our communities.
Do you remember your earliest childhood memory of trauma or when you started realizing the seriousness of the violence in your community?
I think before I experienced the violence in the community, it was more like the household was dysfunctional. When you grow up and you're poor or you don't have as much money as somebody else, because I can't quite say poor because we have heat. The government provides us heat. If you're hungry, you have government assistance, Medicaid. So I'm not going to say poor, but when you grow up in an environment, it's normal. What's not normal is hate, arguing, fighting in the household. So now it's like I didn't really ask to be born or to be in this household. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, okay, why are my family fighting? Why are my parents arguing all the time? Why are they not happy? And when you look back at it now, I can see why. It must have been my dad probably wondering where his next check is going to come from. My mom is wondering maybe if she's going to be here forever. I could imagine what's going through their head now that I'm 40 years old and now that I can look back.
When did you start to notice the anger building?
The anger, it's been in me for a long time. So I got suspended in nursery. I was about 4 years old. So it just was there. And then kindergarten, preschool, nursery, kindergarten, every year up until 9th grade. And in 9th grade, I went to an all-boys Catholic school. I got a scholarship for basketball. I got suspended for the first 13 games. Then things started to get a little bit better, but I still was a kind of a loose cannon. Then in college, I got suspended. And then NBA, I might have been suspended every year in NBA until maybe the last maybe my last 3 years or last 2 years or something like that. But it was getting better, but I was always very fiery and upset inside.
And in part of that documentary, another part that I saw, I think your former coach talks about how you were throwing chairs up into the stands.
Yeah.
And so there were a lot of moments like that where you just didn't know how to express that anger.
Yeah. Just like not really knowing how to express yourself. If your parents, I'll just talk about the Asian culture. In the Asian culture, it's a lot of really smart Asians. And, one of my investors is an Asian lady, and I was like, are your kids coming over to play basketball today? She says, no, they're doing math homework, after school, home, and math. So now they're developing a skill. They're developing some smarts and some intelligence. And now, if you take that to my household, if you just see, fighting and arguing, that's going to affect me. That's, how do you deal with adversity? Oh, you fight. So I learned more about fighting in my household than on the streets. Then you learn it in the streets. But the streets, you're not really prepared for that. Because if you go outside and somebody's going to bully you, or somebody's shooting at the other person, or somebody just got stabbed, like, you could go home and be away from that and be safe at home. Mm-hmm. But then when things are happening in your household, it's like, okay, where do you go? Yeah. For some type of safe zone. I see it says you are safe here. Well, maybe.
It's all furry and everything. Don't you want to just?
Yeah.
So in 2010, you had a big shift. And can you talk about what happened? And at what point in your life did you realize this isn't going to work for me?
Just like being upset, like arguing and all that stuff. I was fighting with it for a long time because it was two sides of me. Really, it might have been four back in those days. I might have not even bipolar. It might have been quadruple polar. I remember having so many things going on in my head. I wanted to be a good person. I wanted to just give scholarships to kids, which I was doing once I made it to the NBA. I was giving kids scholarships. Then I wanted to be in the streets. I still, all my friends, still hustling. Then I want to be a basketball player. I want to be a good teammate. But then I want to fight other players. It was just so much going on in my head. And I was very, very confused. It could have been when my dad left. Well, my mom and dad separated at 13. That affected me for a long time. So it could have been I missed out on the 13, 14, 15-year-old kind of development with the parents, and I relived those moments. You see a lot of kids, even kids that went to, my brother, for example, went to a juvenile delinquent facility when he was 10. He's 33 right now, and he's never been out the system. And he still plays Yu-Gi-Oh! He still has this kid instinct, because he never got the chance to live, those teenage years. And I missed out on a few, not a lot. I missed out on a few, so I always try to get those moments back.
And you have other siblings, too, who have mental illness.
Yeah, my sister, have a mental illness. My auntie is in Creekmore Hospital in New York City, one of the biggest psych wards. Schizophrenia. My dad's functional medication. And my brother's medication, and still trying to get out the system, because he was also in trouble with the law. He committed some crimes over the years. And my other brother, who committed crimes, but he didn't have no mental illnesses. So it was all crazy things going on in the household. And it's like, you see your brothers and your sisters suffering. So, when I'm playing in the NBA, everything is great. But it's like, what can I do to change the lives of my family? Mm-hmm. And I had no control. There's nothing I can do, and that's kind of tough when you see your siblings just suffering and suffering.
What do you think is the difference between you and you seeking help and your siblings? Was it the fact that you had basketball in your life?
I had basketball. I grew attached to a lot of things as a kid. I remember as a kid loving Michael Jackson, loving my pastor, wanting to be something like that. Then growing up, I had Nas to look up to. I had Mobb Deep to look up to. Not necessarily their music. Mobb Deep was more like gangster music, which this is what the doc is named after. Nas was more like conscious. So it wasn't like, I wasn't living that life, but it was like these people are from my neighborhood. And then my cousin Capone, who was on the screen, Roxanne Shante, MC Shan, so many celebrities that came from my neighborhood, which is like really impressive. MC Shan, and the list goes on and on and on. And I always wanted to be like that. And I remember wanting to be like Nas. And I remember wanting to play basketball how Nas rapped. And I remember the first time meeting Nas, he had this diamond bracelet. I was 13 or 15. I'm like, wow, it looked like a rainbow. I was like, this is crazy. And I remember shaking his hand. I'm like, wow, I finally met him. And even though we grew up in the same neighborhood, I didn't see him. Our neighborhood is huge, So I did have people that I looked up to.
And you said it first, I saw an interview you did a few years back where you were so scared to share your story because you felt like you weren't right yet, I think is how you phrased it. So
yeah.
When were you able to shift from that?
Well, back in the days, I came into the NBA at 1999. That's when I entered the public world. And in 1999, if somebody came out, an athlete came out and said, I need help, the media would probably say, this guy's crazy, you can't have him on your team. It wasn't no support system. When Dennis Rodman went on Oprah, he cried and talked about his family. Nobody had any sympathy about what Dennis Rodman was saying. He grew up fatherless, motherless, clueless. And it was never any reports that had any sympathy for that. It was only the worm, he had a dress on, but we just heard the story on Oprah that the guy needs some help. So when you see the media react like that, you don't want to tell nobody you have issues. They don't treat you like you're human. They treat you like you're just a superstar, and then once you mess up, they take you down. And half of the time, the people taking you down are people just reporting a story that they were told to report. This is the story that we're reporting today, this week, this month. This is the narrative. And I can't really assume that each one of the media personalities really want to see somebody hurt. And that's back in the days when you just had one media, it was only one message. If ESPN reported something, everybody reported like ESPN. Now you have social media, so now it's so much more support. Mm-hmm. I don't know what we would have done without social media. I don't know what Kevin Love would have done without social media, or DeRozan. I don't know. I don't know if they would have had the same support.
Those damn reporters.
Yeah.
What would you say to children in the town you grew up? How to break the cycle, how to identify that they might be struggling with a mental health issue?
Well, I think it starts at the top. And you can say it's the household, but it's really not the household because we live in a society where we have rules, where, we have a board. America has a board and people make decisions, and it starts at the top. And at the top, it has to be focused on family. If we're focused more on school than family, if we're focused more on economics than family, or more on business than family, it will never stop. We will always see kids suffering. The family makes everything tick. It makes everything go, keeps everything positive. A strong household, you're gonna win. Our households are broken. The schools need to teach the kids more about being a good father or being a good mother, being a good partner. We learn so much about how to disrespect women, but we don't see on TV how to respect women. You hear all the music. I grew up right under that era, and then when I'm in the clubs or when I'm out with my friends, I'm singing these same lyrics. I'm making these same lyrics. I'm pushing these same lyrics out there. What am I teaching a kid who looks up to me? Yeah, disrespect that woman. Don't raise a good family. You know, have babies by multiple women. Don't get married, right? It starts at the top, which is the people who's running our society, and then that has to filter down to the schools. The schools also partnership. You know, and I touched on it a little bit, but partnership and parenting is super important. And I think once we put some importance on that in the schools, because the schools are the parents, because our kids don't have parents. So whatever they want to say about it, I'm not this kid's mom, I'm not this kid's dad. The teachers are the parents, the police, they are the parents, the firemen. You know, because our kids are growing up fatherless, and they're growing up, you know, not so much motherless. Mothers are really good. Women are, you know, better than men. But, you know, some mothers are a little bit on the wacky side. Some, not a lot.
You talked about broken systems, and there are many. What about our political system in terms of legislation toward mental health and providing the resources? What is something that you'd like to see executed in that space?
I would like to see definitely more funding. There should be more jobs created with social workers, therapists, parenting class. It should be more jobs created. It should be more people applying or going to college for, I forget the name of the degree, psychology and different things like that. And it should filter down, and our kids should feel comfort. You know, it shouldn't just be about passing a math test. You know, what good is being a math major if you're going to commit suicide next year? You know, it just doesn't make sense. You know, what good is, you know, being a business major and, you know, building $1 billion company if you're just going to, you know, you're feeling empty and you just go to drugs? It's happening all the time. It's happening all the time. Look at Amy Winehouse. Look at Whitney Houston. You know, everybody's doing drugs. They're empty inside, right? So we have to, you know, kind of figure that out. And I think it starts, like I said, at the top with the funding, and then, you know, teaching our teachers, paying our teachers more, paying our, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, we have all these billion-dollar companies. So why? And we're asking the teachers to raise this dysfunctional kid that's coming to school with a problem that's liable to hit the teacher, you know? And it's happening now. You see it more on social media. I was one of those kids. You know, why would a teacher want to teach me, you know? So I think at the top, we really need to, you know, fund more of these programs.
Let's talk about from just surviving to thriving. You've been on quite the journey. Can you share what it's been like since the moment where you decided really to do something, and then what you do today to really protect your mental health?
You know, when I took marriage and counseling, that was the therapy that really helped me. The counselor, I really identified with the counselor. We opened up a lot of wounds from when I was 4 years old, 6 years old, and we also opened up wounds that was subconsciously I had, but I didn't know.
Right.
You know, it's like when you're a baby, and if your pinch of hot water falls in your hand, or if you fall, you're gonna react, and you're gonna start to develop a personality. You're gonna start to, you know, feel a certain way when you see a hand coming towards you, or if you see hot water, hot. But when you get older, you forget that. So what my marriage counselor did was, my mom and dad talked about things that was done around me, that I'm like, oh wow, that's why I kind of grew, that's why I was how I was. So now I was able to understand myself. I'm not just crazy, you know, something had to happen. I take a little bit of the blame. I'm a little bit crazy. But it's not all me.
Not all you.
Not all me. You know, and I was like, when I went through that session, and my family went through the session with me. I remember I was in Sacramento. My mom, my dad, my sisters, everybody was communicating with my therapist, and things started to get a lot better for me.
What about, I know being fitness, for example, is very important to you.
Yes.
You want to talk about that, and also meditation?
Yes. And then also, meditation. And I learned how to, when I got into therapy more, one of my therapists taught me how to breathe. And she would ask me, what techniques do you have, when you're getting upset? And I'm like, I don't know, I just try to relax. And we worked on breathing, and we found out, well, she helped me identify where my tension points which was your jaws, your shoulders, and your hips. And she told me, just relax your body and tell me where you feel the most tension at. And then, it was here, it was there. And she said, just relax your face. And when we started to go through those exercises and breathing exercises, I just became so attached to those. That was a hell of a resource for me.
Should we do a quick little
that.
lesson?
Well, yeah, we can if you want.
Do you guys want a quick little breathing lesson?
Okay. So one of the things she told me was, try to relax every single muscle in your body, and then try to identify the places where there's tension. Right now it's in my stomach because I'm like kind of up, I'm not relaxed. You see, so I'm like this and I have tension here, so you want to just relax. And then she says, tense up every single muscle in your body, so like cringe and just tense, and then like let it go. And then let your jaws kind of relax, let your shoulders hang. So many people were just like this and just now, right? Why? Okay? And we don't know we carry that tension. But that tension could be, it can trigger. Somebody could bother you or hit you or say something wrong, and you could be holding tension here that you let out emotionally. So shoulders, and then the hips. The belly area has a lot of tension, And when you're able to release, and just relax and have kind of like a face that's about to just sag off, just like you ever had like good chicken that was baked and the chicken just come right off the bone? Yeah, that's how it should feel. Yeah, that's how it should feel. And then breathing in 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. There's so many great tools that I never had. I'm like, wow.
5 seconds is a long time.
It's a long time, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
It's worth it when you are when you can't pay for counseling. It's $150 an hour, some places.
Yeah.
And then my marriage counseling was $85,000.
Oh, geez.
I don't know how, but it was $85,000.
Well, it worked.
I guess so.
Before we open it up for questions, is there anything else that you want to share about your journey? Anything resounding message you have for people who might be struggling?
I would say definitely try to kind of give back. Like anything you got here today, give it back. Give it back to people that can use it. I would say a lot of times parents forget to say I love you to your child. Not because you don't love the child, you just might not want to say it. It happens a lot. Don't forget to say I love you to your son, to your daughters. They're waiting for it, they're waiting for it, they're waiting for it. Different things like that the more, I think the more energy, the good energy you give out, somebody will catch it. Somebody will catch it. Also, yeah. And one of the things I learned also is like, we have this girl that I was talking to at a therapeutic session. She said that she see colors. And she said, people think I'm crazy because I see colors. I said, you might not be crazy. Like, what colors do you see? She said, I can see colors around people. I'm like, what colors? She said, like orange and green. And I'm like, she said she can see people's like aura. I'm like, that's a really good sign. I don't think you're crazy. Like, that's a really good thing. And sometimes we let people infiltrate our positive energy. Mm-hmm. We're feeling good, and then people just somehow break in. So much energy right now in this room is a lot of energy, and you got to make sure you protect your energy. Don't let people inside, that don't supposed to be there.
It's really funny because I've heard sage clears negative energy, and I
Yes.
smell sage right now.
Yes,
Do you?
let it burn.
Yeah.
Let it burn.
It's crazy.
Let it burn.
And also, I did a little experiment once. I was going on a run, and I would smile at people who probably thought I was absolutely nuts. But the degree to which you smile at someone, they reflect that right back.
Yeah.
And so, to your point. But anyway, thank you
Yes,
so much.
absolutely.
You're amazing. We appreciate you being here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So I want to open it up for questions. If anyone has any questions in the audience, I can give the mic. Okay.
Oh, she has one.
Okay. Oh, you have one?
So a lot of people are really embarrassed about their mental health problems. What made you decide to step out and speak out so that everybody can hear your story?
I think people would be embarrassed because of how the public would kind of identify with you. So if I say I need help, I'm going to come across on television, mainly on television, and maybe publicly that I'm crazy. But who knows, what the producer is going through. Maybe who knows what other people that are judging you are going through. Are they just like you? So I got tired of, just saying I'm the only one crazy. I feel like there's a lot of other people, that's going through what I'm going through too. I shouldn't feel ashamed that I have a serious issue. Why? And I shouldn't feel ashamed that I'm going to improve myself. Why? It just doesn't make sense to me that someone would feel embarrassed for helping themselves, for empowering, themselves. When I was 13, I would go to a social worker with a bunch of kids, and when you go in the building, it's in my documentary actually, and when you go into the building, everyone knew that this was like the crazy house. But I got tired of sneaking there and making sure my friends didn't see me. I'm empowering myself. I'm becoming stronger. So I think when you're empowering yourself, you should feel proud. You should not feel embarrassed. You should not apologize, for empowering yourself.
Thank you.
If you didn't play basketball, what would you want to be?
That's a great question from you, kid. Because most kids ask about Kobe. It's a good question. I love Kobe, by the way. And I could talk about him all day, but that's a good question. When I was 13, I wanted to be a math teacher. My teacher told me that he made $35,000 a year, and I'm like, I need that. That's what I want to do. And that's why I fell in love with math. And I used to be in the neighborhood, and all my friends smoking marijuana right here in these streets. And I remember sometimes just taking my math workbook out, doing all my homework, and just buying another math workbook for no reason, because it kept me focused. I'm like, I'm going to be a math teacher, I know for a fact. So I knew I was going to do something, like that. And then I wanted to be an architect. And I wasn't a great student, but I was super determined, and I always felt like anything I put my mind to, I can do it. So I wanted, my first major in college was architecture, but then I needed some money, so I said, I'm just going to focus on basketball. And that's it.
Okay. Hi, I'm Edward Lee Goldstein. I'm a health educator and write books on the healing power of forgiveness. In your process of evolution, have you worked with people, or how have you found ways of forgiving people that may have betrayed your trust, or maybe you betrayed your own trust in doing some wrong deeds? Thank you.
And what was the last part of your question? Sorry.
The question is, how have you been able to forgive others that may have betrayed your trust, and how you may have betrayed your own sense of right or wrong and learned to forgive yourself?
Yeah, I think I forgive people who might have betrayed my trust was or someone who probably did something wrong to me because I'm not perfect. I remember that I had friends and I wasn't a good friend. They were a good friend to me. So, it was just like, even the incident, it's in the documentary where the guy that hit me with the beverage in Detroit when I had the brawl, we became friends. And the reason I wanted to become a friend was because I feel like it wasn't right that I can hate someone when I'm not perfect. When I turn my back on some of my friends, when I wasn't perfect to my family, how could I hate, someone else? How can I hold a grudge and act like and judge someone else when, I'm just as bad? So when you look in the mirror, sometimes it's scary to look in the mirror. And when you look in the mirror, it's like, okay, I'm not perfect, just like this other person, is not perfect.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for sharing your insights with us. My question to you is, at certain point of life, some of us go through that phase where everything in our life seems to go wrong. Like you're in a very dark place and you're like, wherever you look, there's no light to be seen. So my question to you is, have you ever gone through that phase? And if so, then how did you come out of it?
Sorry, what was the first part of your question?
The first part was like, there's a phase that most of us go through in life where everything seems so dark and there's no light to be seen around. Like you're in a very dark place and everything seems to go wrong in your life. So have you ever gone through such a phase? And if so, then how did you come out of it?
Yeah, I've been through a lot of the phases like that. I remember being 20 or 21 and having a nervous breakdown on the way to my Chicago Bulls game. I was in my car. I remember it was my red Hummer. I was driving from Deerfield to downtown, which is a 50-minute drive. In Chicago, actually, two-hour drive, and just pulling over, having a nervous breakdown. Only one I ever had. I was in a super dark place at that age. Wanted to retire. There's stories out there that I used to drink a lot of alcohol and stuff. I was experimenting with alcohol, marijuana, all type of things to try to suppress things in a super dark place. And I remember when I stopped smoking, 'cause I was smoking to resolve some issues and problems, but it wasn't helping me. It was making things worse. So I remember when I quit, during the NBA, it took me a long time. My first 2 months, or even my first year, was like, I always wanted more alcohol. I wanted more Hennessy. I wanted more marijuana to get rid of these thoughts that's going on in my head. And I remember that being the proudest I was of myself because I guess it's called withdrawal. And I didn't go to a doctor because I was afraid to go to a doctor. I was afraid to go to like an AA or whatever and receive help. But I remember it being very, very hard to not have an occasional drink. I needed it to help me, and it wasn't helping. And when getting through that, I was about 23 when I was coming out of that, kind of needing those substances to make me feel better. I was in a really dark place before that, and I remember getting on the other side, and I felt so much better. And then actually, when I had the fight in Detroit, I think, and everybody know when I laid on the scorer's table, I was in such a good place because I was practicing these habits, these good habits and these good techniques to deal with, like imminent danger or frustration. And I was practicing everything I was working on with my therapist. I wasn't perfect at that time, but I was starting to try to apply it. So I remember being really proud. And then it was crazy because then the brawl happened. Everything I practiced, like within 10 seconds, it kind of went all away. But I remember still being proud of who I was. The next day I appeared on television. I was kind of happy, and it was in the documentary. I remember being very positive on NBC because people didn't know that I came a long way. And the brawl was just like magnified, but I did come a long way. And I remember being proud of myself and then continuing, to improve myself.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, I think that is the end. Thank you
Thanks
for
for
your
having
bravery,
me.
your vulnerability. So appreciative of you.
Absolutely.